June 8, 1917 dawned like any other day for the 415 men descending into the Granite Mountain and Speculator mines in Butte, Montana. Known as the richest hill on Earth, this copper-rich area fueled America's industrial engine, especially with World War I raging in Europe. The Anaconda Copper Mining Company, controlling most of the hill, operated around the clock to meet skyrocketing copper demand. Mines like Granite Mountain and Speculator were sprawling networks of tunnels where men labored under extreme conditions, digging deeper into the earth each day. The workforce was a diverse mix of 16 nationalities, including Irish, Finnish, Cornish, Italian, and Serbian immigrants, all drawn by the promise of steady wages. Life underground was grueling. Oppressive heat, dust-choked air, and the constant risk of cave-ins were daily hazards. The miners relied on the steel skip elevators to carry them 2,500 feet below the surface, fully aware that each descent was a gamble with their lives. Tension simmered beneath the routine, as unions had been weakened, and company pressure for wartime production outweighed concerns for safety. In this environment, the company planned a project to improve fire safety. A new sprinkler system that required lowering a massive oil-soaked, lead-sheathed cable down the Granite Mountain shaft. Ironically, this attempt at safety would unknowingly set the stage for the deadliest hard rock mining disaster in American history. The combination of high-stakes work, minimal oversight, and a complex, poorly understood underground environment created the conditions for catastrophe. It was a powder keg waiting for a single spark to ignite it. The safety project that was meant to protect the miners became the trigger for disaster. The massive 5-inch thick electric cable, designed to power the new sprinkler system, was being carefully lowered down the Granite Mountain shaft late on June 8, 1917. The cable, insulated with oil-soaked paper and wrapped in a lead sheath, slipped and fell nearly half a mile, landing in a tangled wreck at the 2,500-foot level. The fall tore the lead sheathing, exposing the highly flammable insulation inside. Assistant Foreman Ernest Sulau and a shift boss descended to inspect the damage, carrying standard carbide lamps, which produced open flames using acetylene gas. As Sulau leaned toward the mangled cable, his lamp came too close, igniting the oil-soaked insulation. In an instant, the fire shot up the cable like a fuse, engulfing the wooden support timbers of the shaft. The main ventilation system, designed to supply fresh air to the tunnels, now acted as a chimney, pulling smoke, superheated air, and deadly carbon monoxide into the interconnected Granite Mountain and Speculator mine tunnels. Panic spread immediately through the labyrinthine mine network. Workers deep underground had no warning or way to communicate with the surface or other parts of the mine. Every passage became a perilous trap, and the very system meant to keep them alive had turned into a conduit for poison. Within minutes, what began as a small spark had escalated into a life-threatening inferno that would claim 168 men before the ordeal ended. As the fire raged, the miners were trapped in a maze of tunnels that stretched thousands of feet beneath Butte. Thick black smoke and invisible carbon monoxide filled every passage, making each breath a struggle. Many men tried to escape, but the maze-like layout, combined with bulkheads that had never been fitted with emergency hatches, left them with almost no safe routes. Panic set in quickly. Some miners were forced to feel their way along walls, forming human chains in the suffocating darkness. A few groups took desperate measures to survive. Using rocks, timbers, and even scraps of clothing, they constructed makeshift bulkheads, packing them with mud to trap pockets of breathable air. Some miners stayed behind these barriers for hours, waiting in silence, hoping the fire would burn out or that rescuers would reach them. The air grew hotter and thinner as the fire consumed the shaft, and every passing minute increased the risk of suffocation. Communication lines to the surface had been destroyed by the flames, leaving rescuers unaware of who was still alive or where the survivors might be trapped. In these tunnels, courage and knowledge of the mine's layout became the difference between life and death. Every step forward was a gamble against smoke, heat, and disorientation. The tension was unbearable, as men realized that survival depended not on strength, but on quick thinking, ingenuity, and sheer luck. Amid the smoke and searing heat, remarkable acts of bravery emerged. Magnus Duggan, a young tool boy known as a tunnel rat, led a group of 29 men into a dead-end tunnel to create a temporary safe zone. For 36 hours, they huddled together, conserving air and supporting each other as the fire roared above. Duggan guided 25 of his men to safety, but he never emerged himself, reportedly turning back into the smoke to fetch water or help for those left behind. Higher up in the tunnels, shift boss James D. Moore took a similar approach. He and 9 others barricaded themselves with available materials, surviving over 50 hours before being rescued. Moore reached the surface alive, but he later died from injuries sustained underground. Letters written on scraps of paper or directly on tunnel walls gave haunting insight into the miners' final thoughts. One miner scribbled, "All alive but air getting bad, one small piece of candle left, think it is all off." These messages remain a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming peril. The fire had turned the Granite Mountain and Speculator mines into a lethal trap, but ingenuity and courage allowed some to survive. Every decision was critical. One wrong step could have meant instant death. Even in the darkest corners of the mine, miners demonstrated extraordinary presence of mind, showing that survival often required calm under unimaginable pressure. This part of the disaster revealed not only the dangers of industrial negligence, but also the enduring strength of human spirit when confronted by life-threatening chaos. On the surface, Butte descended into grief and panic as news of the fire spread. Families rushed to the mine head, eyes straining toward the steel skip that would carry their loved ones up from the depths. Mine whistles sounded continuously, a mournful code signaling disaster that echoed across the city. Rescue efforts were harrowing. One early attempt sent a cage carrying 2 men directly into the flames, killing them instantly. Firefighters battled the blaze for 5 days before gaining any real control, while recovery operations stretched over 8 grueling days. Amid the destruction, a few miraculous survivals emerged from barricaded groups like those led by Magnus Dugan and James D. Moore. Sadly, for every man who escaped, dozens were found lifeless, suffocated by toxic fumes rather than burned. Rescuers discovered the bodies of 168 miners, most in tunnels or behind improvised bulkheads, a stark reminder of how quickly disaster had overtaken the underground labyrinth. The scene above and below ground revealed the human cost of industrial negligence. The city mourned, but the tragedy also sparked a reckoning. Workers and unions demanded accountability and safer conditions. The events left an indelible mark on Butte, shaping labor movements and industrial safety regulations for years to come. The Granite Mountain Speculator disaster transformed Butte forever. Public outrage over the deaths of 168 men sparked strikes and the formation of the new Metal Mine Workers Union, demanding safer working conditions and fair treatment. Into this tense environment stepped Frank Little, a fiery organizer with the industrial workers of the world who condemned the prioritization of copper production over human life. His speeches galvanized miners, but also made him a target. On August 1st, 1917, less than 2 months after the disaster, Little was abducted by masked men from his boarding house. He was lynched on a railroad trestle outside of Butte, and a note pinned into his body warned others, "First and last warning." Despite an investigation, the killers were never caught, underscoring the danger faced by labor activists at the time. Meanwhile, the company, claiming wartime necessity, persuaded the federal government to send in troops, imposed martial law, and forced striking miners back to work with few of their demands met. The disaster left a scar on Butte that remains visible today. The Granite Mountain Speculator Mine Memorial honors the men who perished, with plaques listing the names of all 168 victims and flags representing the 16 nationalities of the miners. Recordings of their last letters, written in the darkness of the tunnels, preserve the voices of those who faced death with courage. The tragedy became a somber lesson in industrial safety, workers' rights, and the human cost of progress, ensuring that the men who went to work that June night would never be forgotten.